Okay, we are going live here in regards to this, and I'm going to try to do this as quickly as possible towards showing some pictures. First of all, this is a picture of the back of our property in Milan, Tennessee on Gann Road. I was cutting down some limbs there. Also, I'm going to show some pictures here of some things that has basically broken my heart. First of all, I want to go to Milan, Tennessee, since I just got through showing you the backyard. And this is an old car that I was restoring for a Mr. Randy Powell that lived there in Milan, Tennessee. And after I got through with the vehicle, it actually won a great deal of trophies and awards in paint and also in design, etc., etc. Some of these pictures may look a little bit gaudy whenever I put them out there. There I am there putting a bottom quarter panel in that Bel Air. And let me see here. Here I am here welding it again. That would be at Gann Road in Milan, Tennessee. I had my own little restoration shop there. This is basically the last time that that I was associated with my son's life for a great deal of time. That was basically in behind our Lexington, Tennessee house. We had a pond back there, and my son and his wife and 3 boys decided to come over in 2004, and these are some pictures here towards basically the last time that they was physically around me on my property, towards me knowing anything about them, even growing up down in Memphis or growing up in Denver, Colorado. And it was as if that those children just automatically like disappeared because Miss Jackson decided to walk out of my life in 2005. This particular picture right here is a picture of myself and my son and his first wife, Shannon, that he arranged a relationship down in Memphis, Tennessee. This is a picture of my son Nicholas and Michael Kirk. That would be in Jackson, Tennessee, in a trailer that we lived there at Rolling Acres down in Jackson, Tennessee. We lived there for approximately 10 years. Sorry I don't have them organized like I ought to. This is in Beach Lake, Lexington, Tennessee. And basically that was the last time that we had any type of family outing pertaining to my son and his family, because in 2005 Miss Jackson decided to walk out of my life, and whenever she walked out of my life, everybody else did too as well. My son, he was still my son, but he was no longer my close-knit son, because he must have felt like that because Miss Jackson had decided to slam dunk Mr. Jackson the second time, that basically it met his approval towards me no longer being that closely bonded with my own personal son. This is a picture here where we was down in Memphis, Tennessee, my son and I. And that was his best buddy right there that we wound up eating at a restaurant at. This is a picture here of my son and Mr. Brian, that basically wound up I ain't gonna say he caused it, but he initiated the final blows of the relationship towards ending the relationship with Diane. Used to be a Beasley. That's her father right there to the left-hand side with the white hair, Mr. Fred Beasley, that I wound up having the privilege of taking a old Dodge truck and fixing it up for him and painting it all over, that he was just absolutely tickled to death, him and his wife, before that relationship wound up dissolving. That's a picture of my son and Brian. That was more or less a bully. This here is a son, my son, and my dad's girlfriend standing in behind the car there, that you can see Miss Edna Jones. That was my dad's girlfriend. Then here's a picture once more of my son and I. I think that's the same picture down in that restaurant, if I'm not mistaken. I ain't for sure. I'm going to show my some pictures here of my dad. Playing a guitar. James Robert Jackson. Everybody called him Bob. Here's a picture of my son and my mother right before she wound up passing by having cancer. That basically she died at the age of 62 before she got a chance in signing and spending any of her disability Social Security retirement check. She did receive it, but she did not get to spend none of it. Here's a better picture here of my mother in the latter part of her years. She wound up finishing out her life in being a bedsetter and helping elderly people go to their house and sit with them. Some of them she only sat it for 8 hours. Some of them she sat it with for a whole week. And usually people like that has got some little bit of money to be able to spend. That way they don't have to put their elderly people off into a nursing home and have to finish out their lives being around a bunch of strangers. Some of the people you may have known in the nursing home, but by and large you pretty well get the idea of what I'm talking about. These are some pictures of some more of my dad. This was one of the pictures here that that I was puzzled about, because the look of the trailer, that had to have been probably in the 70s, and I couldn't figure out if it was Reelfoot Lake or up in Chicago somewhere, because his sister had a place, Ruth Helen Jackson, over here at Reelfoot Lake, but she only stayed there for like 2 or 3 years, and that could have been whenever she was staying there. I don't know for sure. This is a picture here of my dad that always played guitar. He had people that he played with either in Dyersburg or down towards Jackson, Tennessee at Casey Jones. A lot of times I'd go down there at Casey Jones with him and just sit and kind of browse around. Edna become associated with my father's life after my mother died. Tragically, they had already gotten a divorce. My mother finally drawed up enough courage to break away from the type of chaos that James Robert Jackson had committed during his younger years, whenever he was full of his prime. And then there towards the last, he wound up settling down, in which I'm so glad that he did. That way my son didn't have to experience a lot of the bad stuff that was coming from his grandpa. In other words, James Robert Jackson had to tone it down a little bit after he got in his 50s and his 60s, because if he didn't, his body would not have cooperated with the excitement. This is an outing in behind the house. Just poor people basically enjoying themselves, having a little get-together, homecoming or picnic or whatever. This is an older picture of my dad, and it had to have been probably when we first moved down. I don't know, but I can tell by looking at him there, he's a bit lively, just like this other picture of James Robert Jackson, my dad. It looked like he was probably down in some sort of festivity. Maybe it was Halloween or something. And looked like him and his girlfriend was having a rootin' tootin' good time. And I'm glad that my dad got to meet Edna, and I'm glad Edna got to meet my dad, and I'm glad that they got together, and they basically enjoyed their lives together there towards the end, towards some sort of fulfillment and happiness. Because, you know, once you get to the point that you want to live out your golden years, it's time for you to lay back and to enjoy yourself. This picture here was taken along about June of 1990. That may be my son's car in behind him. I don't know for sure. Anyways, this picture here was taken, looks like November of 91. Sorry about that. Here's another picture of old Bob. A lot of people probably remember him looking that way as he was getting in his golden rocking chair years. Here's a picture here of myself, my dad, and his girlfriend in the house that we had purchased, a double wide, and had set up brand new, that he was ever so proud of. The fact that Shirley and I was moving in a direction towards getting remarried, and he felt like, as well as others, her mom and dad and others, that we pretty well had made a boo-boo in our first marriage and decided to tackle it the second time. Sadly, because of various unforeseen circumstances, that's a picture of my dad and my son, Nicholas. Unfortunately, things didn't work out appropriately like a lot of people felt like that they would. And basically, the second marriage didn't quite last as long as what the first one did. This is some pictures here of a tragedy that hit our property pertaining to a major fire. First of all, I'm going to show this picture here of the way that the property looked. Basically, whenever my dad had things all strung out with boats and welders and cars and trucks and all other kinds of gizmos and gadgets way out in the country. And then, sadly, tragedy struck to the point that his mother's house burnt. And the reason for the house burning was because my dad was always an engineer by heart because of him being in World War II, but he didn't do things according to the specs. And according to my brother, he had this humidifier that he put in a living room that kept not wanting to work right, and he bypassed the safety switch on the humidifier to where it would run. And then him and my brother was down in the bottoms hunting, and they looked up and they seen a great deal of smoke, and by the time they got there, the fire was already out of control to the point that that they couldn't save the house. My brother and my dad both received probably, I'm going to say, at least first-degree burns, possibly second-degree burns, in how that they was getting too close to the fire and trying to put it out. And there towards the last, they realized that their endeavors was in vain, and they basically had to let her burn down to the ground. That picture, this picture here, is a picture where I was at a party that would have been in Bill Bashir's home. Looks like a birthday party for somebody there, maybe even a Christmas party. I would say more of a Christmas party than a birthday party. This is a picture here of a deck that I had built on the property in Lexington, Tennessee, a big screened-in deck. That was our black dog that we had that basically almost knocked me down whenever a tornado come within probably a quarter of a mile of our house, that started out in Jackson, Tennessee, that rumbled all the way up to Lexington, Tennessee, and on the other side of Lexington, Tennessee, I think about 50 or 60 miles. That was a very, very intense moment. But the dog, I tried to open up the back door, even though the winds was howling the way that they was. I tried to open up the back door and the door wouldn't open. And finally I got aggressive with the door and I pushed it as hard as I could. And it come open. And as soon as I got the door open, the dog jumped up and hit me right in the chest and knocked me all the way back to the washer and dryer. This here's a picture of me whenever we first moved to Gann in 1991. That was a shop that I had, working on a car there. This is me again. And if I was a guessing man, I'm pretty well 99.9% sure that would be a picture there in LBL where my wife and I, Shirley Jackson, was camping and enjoying ourselves. This is a picture of my dad and my third and fourth wife, Miss Shirley Jackson. We was actually at a banquet, a celebration of my son getting married to his first wife down in Memphis, Tennessee. That is also a picture down on the other side of Amanda. Once more, all these people suddenly decided to disappear out of my life. And it was a way for them to punish me because they didn't agree with my philosophy pertaining to my passion that God had given me in regards towards my faith in God. That is my son and Amanda having a good time. Here we are again, 99.9% sure. We're at Grand Rivers, Kentucky. I mean, not Grand Rivers, but Hillman's Ferry, Land Between the Lakes. And we're camping. That's Amanda, my son with his turn back, and Michael Kirk. And it looked like his mother right beside of him. I couldn't hardly tell. This is another picture whenever we was at the wedding banquet down in Memphis, Tennessee. And that is Caitlin and Mikey. That is Shirley Jackson's son and his children. Still to this day, I've never seen Michael, Amanda. I'm sure Mikey and Caitlin by now is already grown up. May have already done graduated. I don't know. But you know, whenever people like this just disappear out of your life, regardless whether it be my wife's family or my son's family, there's a scar there, because it's a very cruel thing, especially whenever something like that occurs, and the point that it could be controllable if people would just logically get together and try to work out their differences. There I am there in a shop, Michael and my son Nicholas in behind there. That if people would just work out their differences, things would go back to being normal. But sometimes those scars get so deep that there is no turning back. And that's the sad part about separations and divorces. This is whenever I was in Land Between the Lakes. Basically, I'd already went through the ceremony where God had sanctified the second sword, and I had come back to Land Between the Lakes towards digging this out, and basically I was taking the altar and various material that I had in the sacred site, and I was burying it. And the reason why I was burying it was because I didn't want nobody bothering it. And then after I buried all the material, I took a bunch of big stones. You keep in mind now, I'm way out in the middle of a primitive area. There is no river or water nowhere near me. And I was taking dirt in buckets and mixing it with what little bit of water that I had and turning it into mud. That was basically transfigurating into something that I really didn't want to do. But basically I had started this project in 2008, long about June 2008. And the project did not get fully completed until 2009. In 2009 is whenever I went up into the Kentucky area and basically helped them in regards towards a major ice storm. And in the proceedings of the ice storm, is whenever I was forced out of Livingston County because of different people that didn't like me, because obviously they couldn't stick me for what they was wanting to stick me with towards me being a homegrown terrorist. That was the finishing part of the first part of the ceremony. And then there towards the last of the ceremony, the people in Oklahoma gave me this seal. You can see part of it right there. It is a Native American Indian seal that I basically planted in this hole right here. It was on the 26th of June. I think it was June. Somewhere around there. But anyways, it was 6/26/09 of whenever that I had completed the course, after that they had blowed the back of my truck up and me realizing that I was not going to be able to get nowhere with these people after 20 plus years of me basically sacrificing my life towards, that it was evident that they was not going to render or listen to any of the stuff that I had to say. Once more, this is a picture of Caitlin and her brother, Mikey, that absolutely broke my heart whenever Miss Jackson decided to play with me, toy with me, in marrying me the second time, and me falling in love with her whole family, and then all that basically being snatched from me. And if it wasn't for the man that supports this picture and behind the memory of Jesus Christ, if it wasn't for him, I never would have been